Hi, Precious. I'm Blake. I use they, them pronouns, and I am here to help answer this question for you, which basically was asking which members of this set B, which is listed up here, which members of this set B are in the integers. So, um, to answer this question, I think it would be really helpful to know what the integers are in the first place. So let's just start there. What the heck is an integer? Well, the integers, which we would abbreviate with this Blackboard font Z, right? This is a Z in Blackboard font. The integers basically consist of 0. So 0 is an example of an integer. And the positive whole counting numbers, like the numbers that just have a nice cutoff after the decimal place, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, keeps going on and on. Like 100 is an integer, 1000 is an integer, etc., etc. But the negative versions of all of these numbers are also in the integers. So -1 is an integer, -2 is an integer, -3, -4, and -5, etc. Right? So these are all the integers, the positive and negative counting numbers, and 0. So what are examples of numbers that are not integers? Well, some that aren't integers are, for example, the square root of 2. Because the square root of 2 is equal to 1.141, and it just kind of keeps going. So it's not really a number, right? It's equal to 1.141, blah, 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 blah. So it's not really an integer because it doesn't really have a cutoff at that decimal. Another example is pi, because pi is about 3.14159. So that's not really an integer either because it doesn't have a cutoff after that decimal place. Another example is 1.5. This isn't an integer either because we would actually write this as 1.5. So there is something after the decimal. So this gives you an idea of what integers are and what integers are not. So let's go back to our set B and go through each member and see if it really is an integer. So we'll start with 15. Well, 15 has a nice clean cutoff after that decimal place because you could write 15 as 15.0. And another way to think of it is 15 is one of those counting numbers that we mentioned, and it's somewhere over here, right? So it is in fact an integer. So 15 is the first one that's an integer. The square root of 5. Well, 5 isn't really a perfect square. We can't really think of a nice clean number that we can multiply by itself to get 5. So the square root of 5 is actually not an integer. It's just going to be some kind of decimal. So that one's out. -23 is an integer. So 23 is one. 0 is also an integer. Because both -23 and 0, there's a clean cutoff after the decimal. 0.5, though, there's something after the decimal, so it's not an integer. The square root of 16, we can actually rewrite as 4, right? Because 4 times 4 is 16, so the square root of 16 is 4. And so the square root of 16 is actually an integer because we can find some nice clean whole number that's the square root of 16. So the answer is 15, -23, 0, and the square root of 16, which is equal to 4. Those are the members of the set that are in the integers. Hope that helps. Thanks so much.